I am happy to have the honor of moderating this discussion today, which will be on women and sustainable development, their economic empowerment, and how we are connecting to policy. We are also honored to have with us the Commissioner for Rural Economy and Agriculture, Dr. Josepha Sacko. You're very welcome. This is really a great pleasure for us. Whenever we have our policymakers with us, it gives us a lot of courage about what we are doing.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. We are also pleased to have the international organization that is responsible for food and agriculture in the United Nations, represented here by Dr. Clara Park, who really is an expert in her own field of gender and agriculture. She comes to the office in Ghana from a long experience in Asia and in North Africa, and we know that those are very interesting experiences. Things that are happening about food security in those areas have a lot that we can learn from. I just saw a clip the other day of Egypt having 600 greenhouses preparing themselves to supply vegetables to the rest of Africa. So there's so much going on elsewhere that we can learn from. We are also happy to have our own two members of civil society, Constance Okeke. Constance, as you know, is with ActionAid International, and she is responsible for rural economy, agriculture, and international finance in ActionAid International. And she has a lot of experience and has been working with us on rural women, getting the women farmers, the Kilimanjaro initiative, organizing rural women farmers around Africa. So she is one of the ones in the field and has a lot to share with us about what is happening with respect to the vulnerabilities that rural women are experiencing. So we are glad, Constance, that you can be with us. We have who for me is a new face, Dr. Chengi Ndlovu.
Thank you, Madam Selma.
Yes.
Happy to be here.
She's from Zimbabwe, and she comes with an interesting perspective, but one which is important for us, and that's the perspective of women in cross-border trade. As many of you know, I'm very passionate about women agriculture vendors and the value chain, which is what we do in the program called EWA for the GMAC. And Chengi, what you have to say about women in cross-border trade, the issues that they have to face, also the issue of women vendors who are in place in the countries, and those also cross borders and come back to sell their goods. So we will be happy to hear what you have to say to inform us. One of the things I'd like to say is that quite often in civil society, when we work, we do not, we see ourselves as non-governmental and therefore often do not connect with what government is doing. The outcome of this discussion should be to see how we can connect better with policy. And that's why the commissioner is here, but also to remind us all that whatever we do, try to see what the government is doing and how we can connect to policy making, to strengthen our own position and to give us access to the resources that we need. And we hope that these things come out. So I would like to welcome all of the participants who have signed up for this webinar. You have a lot to contribute, and we will be looking forward to everything that you have to say so that we can take it all into consideration. And this discussion, as you know, will be going on all during the week on Twitter. So if you don't get your points in now, please get them in during the week because our participants will be online to respond to you. So let me first call on then Chengi Ndlovu. Chengi, you have the floor for say 7 to 10 minutes to share your insights with us.
Thank you, Dr. Thelma Awori. Good afternoon, everyone, or morning, wherever you are. I know there are people all over the world who are actually listening to this webinar. Thank you, GMAC, for this opportunity to talk about trade issues vis-a-vis women. As you are aware, we are all celebrating that Africa is actually done us proud by actually signing into this ACFTA that comes live in January. We all know that it should have come live in 1st of July, but due to COVID-19, that hasn't taken place. But at the same time, we are grateful because we are seeing a silver lining in all this. What it means is it has presented us with a window opportunity for us to be prepared, to prepare our women constituencies, our women organizations, the women businesses, to position themselves on the eve of the African Continent Free Trade Agreement. Right, from the onset, I think I would like to briefly touch on why it is so special that we talk about women and trade. This is because we all know that the economy is a gendered structure, and policies, most policies, when they are rolled out, they've got good intentions, but you find that the impact varies according to the population demographics. And in most cases, when the impact is negative, the women feel it more. The negativity of the policies, the women tend to feel it more. So that is why now there's a call to streamline gender into policies. And I am happy that the ACFTA has actually done that because we've got actually an article that has set aside gender inclusion. We have actually the preamble capturing everything. What is some agreements have just acknowledged the women inclusion, women economic empowerment in their agreement. The ACFTA has gone further in actually recognizing the role the women play in the economy. They have gone further by actually putting in remedies should there be any problems regarding that inclusion, because in some agreements actually as well as they did acknowledge women to be promoted by those agreements, there were no mechanisms to fall through, no mechanism to hold them accountable. But our Africa Continent Free Trade Agreement has gone further in actually putting in instruments that will actually see that the women effectively participate in the economy. And we've seen the agreement even going further so as to actually put in funding measures, because we have realized that some of these businesses fail to take off because of the lack of funding. So the ACFTA has actually ensured that this happens. And obviously this has to be actually be translated into the national economies and be domesticated to reflect the spirit of the ACFTA. Right, women in the gendered economy, we find that women play a lot of roles. They play multiple roles, of which I have synthesized into as producers, as traders, as workers, and as taxpayers. As traders, they face the incidence of taxation. And as far as taxation is concerned, briefly, I'm going to talk about the VAT as a tax. VAT as a tax impacts negatively on women because VAT is a consumption tax. And women actually being on the low income bracket, they find that they spend most of their money on basic commodities. And those basic commodities, once they're attracting VAT, it means a lot of the women's income will go in actually providing that tax. So I would like our policymakers to look at VAT as a tax that is being based on consumption or on basic goods, because that tax tends to affect women more negative than their other counterparts. Then women as workers and producers, women are in the farming, in agriculture. Most of them, they remain as subsistence farmers. So we want to see a situation where women upscale, they become commercial farmers and contribute. In fact, in as far as trade is concerned, we find that with the FTA, it's actually banking a lot on value addition. And with our women as farmers, now that we're foreseeing them actually being empowered to actually participate in the value chains, we already see a gap that our women must be empowered in order for them to meet the demands of the export markets. The export markets are very strict markets. There are standards which are supposed to be adhered to. So we don't want a situation whereby women fail to actually participate in those export markets because they don't have the acumen, they don't have the capacities, the skills that are required in order for them to actually prevail on those export markets. And how that could be done is to actually, maybe if there's a targeted export market, that we actually have a working relationship. Because as we know, collaboration is going to be the key. We can no longer afford to be to move as silos. What I'm speaking about is when an export market is identified, let it be the country, the host country, and that exporting country to come together and see how the women can be given the skills to meet the strict export standards of the export market. And again, I'm talking as women as cross-border traders, we look at our border posts. Our border posts they are not very friendly places. There is no infrastructure. I'm talking about the physical infrastructure right now that is actually friendly to the women as they do their cross-border trade. And mind you, being cross-border traders, we don't want them again to be cross-border traders forever, because being a cross-border trader, you are sort of in the informal sector. And we are saying we want to also to see our women actually participating as formal business people. By doing that, not only dignity is restored, they will also tend to enjoy the preferential treatment that will come with the ACFTA. We know that for Africa to become this single continent, this single market that is being formed by FTA, there will be a lot of liberalization of tariffs. And in order for our women to enjoy the liberalized tariffs, there needs to be registered entities. And as registered entities, it's only then that they can enjoy the benefits of the ACFTA. So what am I talking about here? I'm talking about maybe the technical aspect as well, that they need that training. They also need that capacity. So it should be capacity building throughout. As traders, they must know what is actually entitled to them in terms of the rates of duty. I know there is the STR, the STR that is there for women traders, which only limits them up to 2,000. And that on its own is limiting. Remember, we're saying we want them to grow. Sorry? We want them to become international traders, to scale up their businesses. By scaling up their businesses, it means that their businesses won't be vulnerable to trade shocks, as it were. If there's a trade shock within the domestic market, it means that they can also rely on the international market, because already there are players in the international market. And thirdly, the post-COVID-19, we have seen that what is going to be the new normal is going to be the economy is going to be more, the economies that are going to be formed are going to be more resilient, and they are going to be digital in outscope. And then the other point is that the economies have to be inclusive and sustainable. All those, the resilience, digital inclusiveness, and sustainability, all those factors, we find that maybe they could be lacking in our MSMEs, because our MSMEs, they're mostly driven by women. So what do we do now? So we're also lobbying the strategies now that for our MSMEs not to be actually face the crisis of the pandemic as they have done, because they have been the worst affected by the pandemic because of the nature of their businesses. Now going forward, we're speaking of resilience, we're speaking of sustainability, we're speaking of digitalization. All those actually also present gaps. When we're speaking of digitalization, as we have seen during the COVID-19, most of the businesses will actually become online. There's a lot of activities in online businesses. And yet our women, they are not yet in that space to actually participate on the online platforms. So what should happen now? What it means that capacity should be built so that women actually have access to the technology. And once they have access to the technology, they also need to be in possession of the smartphones. And according to the AU report, it appears Africa is lacking in that space of actually us having smartphones. Only 36% of Africa has the smartphones. And in the future going forward, it will involve that it will be it will be abnormal not to have that gadget. So as women, they now need to have that as well. So what that would mean is actually lobbying investment in that area, in the area of telecommunication, so that our women will also benefit, because at the moment, the data is also very expensive. So how do they actually manage to participate in this new normal that is actually, or that is actually on us as we speak? So it will be capacity building in the technical area. And then as far as resilience, these businesses, it should be actually be affirmative, a deliberate strategy of the big businesses to partner with MSMEs. And by so doing, it means that when the shock comes, it doesn't only affect MSMEs to the extent that has happened, but the cushions, the shocks will be absorbed by the cushioned strategy that will have been put by the businesses. I'm talking here about maybe having a deliberate action that our women become part of those chambers of commerce that are in our countries. We make a deliberate effort to see to it that they are invited, they become part of these chambers. And as far as also sustainability is concerned, we're also looking at the government procurement, that the government procurement, it should actually cease to look at itself as a silo or as a standalone entity. It actually must actually look at the MSMEs as part of the whole ecosystem. And in a balanced ecosystem, if something cannot fail totally, as we have seen it happen with our MSMEs during this pandemic. So what we are saying is that businesses should partner with our MSMEs so that they form a sound ecosystem that is also going to help the business to actually stay afloat, as well as the MSMEs. I think for now, I'll just end here.
You have done very well, Chengi. Thank you very, very much. First of all, for sticking within the time frame, and you've covered quite a few of the issues that are important, and I would like us to remember the issue of taxation, the need for upscaling production, to train women to participate in the export markets, the issue of infrastructure, not only infrastructure at the border posts, but infrastructure in the internal markets. If you look at some of our markets, especially some of the ones in West Africa and just all around, you find the markets are horrible, especially when it comes to health and sanitation. I'd like to just tell you that the Institute for Social Transformation, which is a GMAC member, has begun to help market women to become digital. And they started a project where women can now market their vegetables through the internet. They have prepared a market app. And if you are in your office, you can just order on the app and the vegetables will be delivered to your office. So that is really helping. It's just one small example, but it's an example that others can look to and see what to do. And if other members of GMAC are listening, try to get in touch with the Institute for Social Transformation and see what they are doing. So thank you again very much, Chengi. That was very insightful. I'd like to now call on Constance Okeke. Constance, are you with us?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Madam Thelma, and thank you, other panelists, for this opportunity. I would like to be sharing on some of the risks that is being faced by women farmers and the young ladies within the agriculture sector, especially in the rural area. It would be good for us to realize that prior to this COVID, for instance, the agriculture sector already had a lot of challenges ranging from low public investment in agriculture. We all know about the Maputo Declaration, the 10% budget allocation to agriculture sector, which our national governments are not adhering to, despite the fact that they've all signed to it. We've also had issues of climate change effect in terms of climatic conditions that affect our farming, natural disasters, issues of conflict, And more recently, we've had the locust outbreak within the Eastern Africa region and also even invading the West Africa region. But be that as it is, the issue of the pandemic definitely has had a lot of impact on the women farmers, because we know that they are the major food producers within the continent. And given the lockdown experiences we had, and then the issues of people not being able to move around, this has gone a long way in affecting women farmers in terms of food production, and also being exposed possibly to getting affected by the COVID. Some of the women had complained of difficulty moving their products from one location to the other. And this has also led to them losing a lot of crops, because they were not able to get to the farms to save their crops, harvest them, and then store them properly, because some of them don't even have the right and necessary storage facilities. And we also had issues of some of the interventions that government would before now provide, like access to essential inputs like improved seedlings, organic and non-organic fertilizers, and also access to credit. These were kind of stalled because governments had to focus on providing opportunities for people to prevent the pandemic from spreading. So this kind of brought a lot of pressure. Most women lost their source of livelihood. They were not able to provide food for their families. I remember my organization had to go to the field to provide palliatives to help these women. And they were saying that they needed food. Some of them were pawning some of the small food items they had to get the essential ones, while also even being able to make adequate arrangements to help their families stay safe. But then this also meant that even people that had the resources to buy the food was not seeing the food. Then you had issues of security. Even with the pandemic on ground, the security issues across the continent had not abated. For example, in Nigeria, you have the Boko Haram issues, you have the issues of cattle rustlers across Africa that was still going on even within the pandemic. So the whole issues were bombarding women from all angles. And then that was, affecting, people. And then given that now, you find out that going to the market, the food items, the cost of food items is going high.
Keith?
Unfortunately, I seem not hear Madam Okeke.
But they need resources, they need support. Before now, we are not able to move around to support, keep good hygiene, having access to water. And then if are being passed around or can you hear me?
Only now.
Yeah, can I go on?
Yes, but try to see if you can wind up a little bit. You have about five more minutes or so, and then I would like to call on the commissioner because she has a 3 o'clock appointment. I've just been informed on the chat. But carry on, yes.
Okay, all right. So basically, the impact has been very huge. But then again, the civil society groups like the GMAC team, ActionAid, and the rest of them have really come up to face these challenges by supporting these women farmers to be able to speak out, talk to the government, have the interface with government, you know, so that they're able to share their problems. Like I know there's been a lot of webinars where organizations, the civil society organizations, have tried to support the women farmers with data so that they're able to connect and then speak to the government. A typical case was what happened in Nigeria, where within the lockdown, where it was difficult for farmers to reach out to share the experiences they were having with moving their goods and avoiding harassment by government officials that were blocking people from moving. We had the Zoom webinar. We supported the farmers with data, tried to cluster them in places where they can have access to internet, and they were able to speak up. And then government had to give the order that they should be allowed to move, especially the women farmers that have to move food. So civil society organizations have also been coming together. I know the GMAC had, under the EWA, Empowering Women in Agriculture, had pulled together the civil societies, working with them to put up a position paper to document these issues that the farmers are facing so that we can get proper policy interventions. And last but not the least is the issues of the biannual review report. The second biannual review report has been released, and then it shows that, yes, the countries are progressing, but there's still a lot of gap that has to be closed up. How are the countries, you know, ensuring that implementing the CAADP, that is the Comprehensive African Agricultural Development Program, is aligning with our agricultural development plans within the countries? Because if we follow truly to this program, we'll find out that COVID or no COVID, we're able to, you know, mitigate some of the impact of this pandemic across the nation, and the impact is going to have on women. So basically, the civil society organizations are ensuring that the voices of the women farmers are heard. We're also making sure we are collecting data to be able to say the number of women that has been affected and the number of women that are within these spaces that needs to be helped so that the pandemic will not have so much impact. So I think I will drop it here. And then as the discussion goes on, I will add one or two more issues to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Constance. I note, you know, your exposition on the challenges. I'm glad to see that you are empowering the women farmers to confront government and to demand, to make certain demands of government, and that governments are responding. And your point about linking up with the fundamental documents are very important, CAADP, etc. I'd like to call everyone's attention to the document that has been produced by the WDGD, the Women's Department, the Department of Gender in the AU, because they do have some guidelines for COVID in agriculture. So Constance, when you talk again, I want to know certain things about whether women are getting said seeds and food and, you know, those kinds of things. Maybe you would tell us something about that. But let me say to Dr. Park that I will call on the commissioner now, because I understand she has to go to another engagement. These are the burdens of her position. Several things to do at the same time. So Commissioner, may I call on you now? You're very welcome, and we are very honored to have you. You have the floor, madam.
Thank you very much, dear sister, Dr. Delma. And it's true that I have another commitment because I need to go and stand for a high-level meeting and represent the chairperson of the African Union Commission. So I'll be very, very, very fast because time is against me. What I'm going to share with you is what type of policy do we come about, at the national level to support effective intervention. So those are the type of information that I would like to share with you. Most have been said by the previous speaker. She has already entered into detail about the BR report. So I will just go straight to present my policy issues. Good afternoon, every one of you, colleagues, panelists. This year, 2020, marks the 25th anniversary of the Beijing Platform for Action. We were intended to be groundbreaking for gender equality and make our own, our own looking back, what have we been doing for during these 55 years? What are the achievements? But unfortunately, due to the pandemic, COVID-19, we really couldn't, go out with our ambition and revise where we have gaps, where we have to improve on our own this big platform of Beijing for Action. So with this, let me make some key proposal that we need to capture so that we can really have a clear picture of the impact of women in the rural area. First of all is the capture of data. We don't have enough data in order to say what is happening in the rural area, and also the agricultural livelihoods of those people. So data collection is one of the key aspect that we really need to focus upon. And with the partnership the commission, this department, DREA, has with FAO, we're able to have an assistant from FAO that was working with us. Now the contract is finished, but we are negotiating with FAO to come back so that during our BR, we also have to include or embed, the work of women. We know that more than 55%, of the labor, the work labor is women. We all know that. So this one, a lot has been done, in this sector of agriculture, but we don't have data. So we need to really bring out clearly, a data that we say when we are talking about agriculture, it should be, on gender perspective. What do women do? And we're lucky to have this type of assistance, the technical assistance that we got from FAO, and the last BR that we approved, our head of state adopted in January this year. It has some elements of data on the contribution of women, in agriculture. And the second one, we need to target women and girls in all effort to address the socio-economic impact of the COVID. So those information, those data, we really need to commit clearly so that we can build back better, because we have evidence base. And the third one is to boost women's access to technology. Much has been said. We know that without technology, we cannot. And of course, education comes with this. So we need to give them access to education so that they can easily apply the new technology and digital financial services to cover the gender digital divide. So these are very, very important. So we need to build capacity of our women so that they can be on the same page with men, so that we can attain all these goals that we set ourselves under the CAADP, under the CAADP and the 10 years action plan of the Agenda 2063 at the African Union. We have 7 commitments, and in this commitment, women have been doing, but let us come with a clear picture of statistics. What are women saying? But because when we say 20%, about 20%, no, we have to be precise and we have to have data. And I call upon all the partners, mostly the UN Women, to really support us on that one so that we can have really credible data in terms of women in agriculture. They play a very good, a very important job. The second one that I want to share with you is the CFTA, to ensure the gender sensitive response. So with the CFTA, as we know that in January is going to commence, that we are going to commence the trade. And we know that women play also, even we can see at the domestic market, if you go to a market, who are in the market selling? They are women. So they are already inside this business of trade. But we want them to really go beyond the trade and build their capacity, empower them. So the CFTA has no specific provision on gender. But we have to make sure that all the action we identify, it has to be gender perspective, so that everybody is included, leave no one behind. However, Africa spends, as you might be aware, just to share some statistics, that $47 billion we imported last year, so $47 billion on food imports. Why? When we have arable land, we have resources, we have a dynamic use that we can, easily, unlock the potential of this sector, which is agriculture. So with these amounts that we are spending, Bill, to to import foods, which many of our country cannot afford it, you know. So we have to make sure that through the CFTA, we reduce it substantially so that we can boost or triple the inter-African trade in agricultural products. We know that in Africa, 75% of the trade is agricultural product and service. This is because we are not industrialized, we are not manufacturing cars, or it is more of it is agricultural product. Even when we look at the fabrics we women wear, it comes from cotton. So that is where we really need to, you know, strengthen this sector, the agricultural sector, and come out with a very resilient agricultural system. So what I was trying to say, so the intra-African trade is very important, and it's one of the fourth commitment of the Malabo Declaration. Inter-African trade for our agriculture and food products under CFTA is projected to increase from between 20%, that is 9.5 billion US dollar, and the 30%, that is $17 billion by 2040. This is the potential we have in this inter-African trade, depending on the degree of liberalization compared to the situation before. Because if without a CFTA, so if you have CFTA, those are the perspective that, you know, the projected tendency that we can gain with this CFTA, and women are included, of course. The agriculture sector, which is, we know we trade sugar, vegetable, fruits, nuts, and agriculture, beverage, tobacco, meat, and dairy product, is likely to gain the largest trade expansion, according to the ECA report of 2018. CFTA will create immense opportunity for women's empowerment in the agriculture sector by providing expanded markets for export. We know that we are here in the East Africa, women are very active in flour production and fruits to Europe, to other markets. This is a very, very good opportunity that our women have, and we have standard. We need to really create the ecosystem, you know, to boost this inter-African trade for women. And the opportunity to integrate and the opportunity for women to integrate into agricultural regional value chain, value-added agro-processing, and other upstream and downstream activity in relevant sectors. So we have a lot of opportunity, and women being already there, being familiar, is just a matter of building their capacity. Lastly, the third point, you asked me about what the commission, what are the commission doing, you know, during this pandemic, what's response? And you want to have more insight about the African Ministers of Agriculture. It's true that Africa's agriculture sector has been hit by several shocks. It was so say, I don't want to repeat. We had in the past three years, we had 3 shocks, which is the fall army worm. We still have the desert locust in this part of Africa, and then we are having now the COVID-19. With the COVID-19, so even before the crisis, the statistics tells us that about 256 million Africans, or 20% of the population, were suffering from chronic undernutrition in 2018. Now, mostly 220, among these statistics, these numbers, 239 million of them are in sub-Saharan Africa. So with this, what did we do? Together with our partner, which is our strategic partner, FAO, we call upon a meeting, a ministerial meeting, so that we can, you know, evaluate the implication of COVID-19 on food and nutrition security in Africa. All the 55 member countries, member states were present, and we had really a good record. About 45 ministers attended this meeting, and we came out with you know, some far-reaching recommendation in the 5 areas which we discussed. Namely, the first one is social protection. We think that during this pandemic, we have to really look at the issue of social protection. mostly women, vulnerable women and children, vulnerable population, communities, women and children. Second, the crop calendar. It was disrupted due to these anti-pandemic measures that our member states took. So we discussed about the crop calendar. We need to make an assessment of each country's crop calendar so we know when are we going to, make sure that the inputs are there, agriculture inputs are there for farmers to have access to seed and all this. So crop calendar was one of the aspects that was discussed during the ministerial. Then we have supporting domestic markets. We have to leave the market open, domestic market, and most of these are women that are working there. So taking advantage of the mechanism of the newly created, the CFTA that I just presented you, so that we can triple, the inter-African trade among the region. Priority should be our region. The regional border, inter-boundary this thing, and open the border. And the fifth is safeguarding input supply chain for small-scale agriculture producers, poultry, fishermen, and livestock, all the ecosystem of agriculture. So we came out with a very comprehensive political declaration, and under this political declaration, minister committed to supporting access to food and nutrition for African most vulnerable population. And we know that Senegal and many countries are already doing it. They are giving food, during this time, providing African with social safety nets, and many countries are already doing. We have, and then minimizing disruption to the safe movement and transport of essential people, the transport and marketing of goods and services, and keeping border open on the continent for the food and agricultural trade. That was a decision that was taken by the ministerial. And we set up a task force. And this task force is comprised with FAO, the key stakeholders in agriculture, FAO, European Union Commission, African Development Bank, the World Bank, International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD, and food and WFP, the World Food Program, and African Union Development Agency, AUDA NEPAD. The task force members are intervened in four work stream. I will not, due to time, I will not really go to the truth, but we can share all these documents with you. And then the task force, we recommended that even other sectors that are not part of the agricultural sector should meet, mostly for trade. Then we convened on the 27th of July another tripartite ministerial meeting with ministers in charge of agriculture, trade, and finance, because we need finance to be part of it, because they need to invest. The ministers of finance, they need to invest in this key sector, which is agriculture. So the meeting came out also with some joint communique, which is strengthening the first declaration, the ministerial declaration. Right now, this task force is meeting. We are working. Even yesterday, we had our own meeting. We are preparing the report to meet with our ministers next month, and present our report and get more guidance from our ministers. So all these are the efforts we are doing in order to ensure that African community and African women that are the key players in this agriculture rural area, they should all benefit. And all this program should look at it should be mainstream and have gender perspective aspect. I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sako, our Commissioner for Rural Economy and Agriculture. That was very, very informative. I'm looking at the time and I can see you probably have to stand up now and leave to go to your next meeting. Is that it? Yes.
Thank you.
So we shall just appreciate the time you have given us and give you permission to go ahead to do your next duty. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. And we look forward to your sharing those documents with us.
I will do the declaration. I will share it with you. We will send it to you. No problem.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Doctor, and all the colleagues. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay. So we shall now go to Dr. Clark, Clara Clark from FAO. I think it's timely that you should begin to speak after the commissioner because she's mentioned FAO so many times. And that means you have a lot to tell us. So you have the floor, Clara.
Thank you so much, Dr. Thelma. And the beauty of coming last is that I don't have to repeat what the other excellent speakers have already spoken about. So if you allow me, I'll share my screen because I've prepared a short PowerPoint presentation. Okay, do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
We do.
Okay, so thank you so much for inviting us to be part of this important dialogue. I've already gained so many insights from the colleagues and speakers who have spoken before me. Allow me to just put what we are talking about a little bit into context. I won't repeat what others have said. The commissioner referred to the figures regarding the hunger and malnutrition, specifically in the region. I would also want to add maybe just one point that across the world, in all different regions and continents, the prevalence of hunger and malnutrition is more severe, even though slightly, for women. And this is also the case in Africa. Constance also referred to the other challenges that are pressing in the world, but also in the continent. Of course, the impacts and the implications of climate change, including extreme weather events and droughts and natural disasters. The importance of managing the rich natural resource base in a sustainable manner. The commissioner just referred to the underperformance of the agriculture sector more generally. Also, we have a challenge related to population growth. So how are we going to feed an increasing population? A big problem that is always remarked in at high-level meeting is the issue of the increasing youth population and how to employ fruitfully young women and men and create this generation equality that we have committed to. And of course, the impacts of conflicts. As it was already emphasized, despite not being performing at the best, agriculture is still the most important sector of the economy in Africa, employing over 50% of the population, and with women representing about 50% of the labor force, if not more. And 60% of the population still living in rural areas in most countries in the continent. This means that the impacts, but also the long-term impacts of COVID will affect millions of farmers, women and men in Africa. And this has been also confirmed by the recently published report by the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. The pandemic has also unveiled and shed light on some of the structural weaknesses of our food systems, including the lack of coordination along value chains and including different actors of the value chain, inadequacy in storage and cold chain infrastructure. We mentioned the issue of perishable produce that people were unable to market, to get to marketing. Low investments in many countries still in upgrading value chains, and outdated and not inclusive business models. And of course, a big lesson is the untapped power of innovation and digital solutions. So it is quite clear by now that business as usual is no longer an option. If we are serious about producing more food for a growing population, and of course, we want to do it in a sustainable, efficient, and environmentally sound manner. The first speaker has already, and Constance also has already talked about many of these issues that I have on these slides, which are the impacts of COVID on rural women. So I will not repeat them. Maybe just to add that I think one of the lessons of the pandemic has been, it has really put, shed light that is that cannot anymore be ignored on the workload of women and the care work that women carry out. So all the lockdown measures have had major implications on women's work burden due to children staying at home, care for the elderly, care for the sick people. And this has also come at the risk of increased instances of domestic violence. And this is true, unfortunately, in almost all countries. We've seen many more cases of domestic violence. And in rural areas, of course, this has been exacerbated by less access to support services, health services, partially due to lack of them altogether and poor infrastructure, but also due to mobility constraints, the burden of care work, and of course, cultural norms and lack of information that is getting out to rural women and illiteracy oftentimes. And we've also seen that women were often absent from the tables and the instances and the processes where decisions were made about how to address the post-COVID, the reconstruction, and to mitigate the impact of COVID. So for instance, a gender analysis carried out by CARE International in West Africa has also shown that not only farmers have had difficulties in accessing seeds and fertilizers, but women in the informal sector, this was already mentioned, have seen major drops in their incomes due to lockdown measures and the inability of selling food in the markets. The women's savings groups and also village savings and loan associations have suspended their repayments, and households have increased instances of poor access to food and due to reduced income, resorting also to distress strategies, including eating less nutritious food, having less meals during the day, and also selling the the very few assets that households and women have. And I already mentioned gender-based violence. But interestingly, this analysis also showed how women in Africa are resilient, so how they've taken the lead in responses. So we don't want to picture women as always being vulnerable. We want to also leverage on their resilience, on their strengths, on their resourcefulness. And women have been finding new ways of sharing information, making and selling masks and soaps. And they've also reorganized the structures and the methodologies of saving groups to allow for social distancing and supporting hygiene while maintaining solidarity and safety nets. So this is something that really characterizes women, no? Putting solidarity and care for the others out there first. I will now go into the detail of the next two slides, but just to show very quickly, I chose a couple of themes just to show that of course, the COVID pandemic is hitting in a context of already existing inequalities and the other speakers have also referred to this. I've chosen access to land, which is of course one of the key productive resources for farmers. And we can see in this slide, which takes a few countries to compare, that the darker orange bar, which shows the agricultural land area accessed by women, is much, much smaller and not comparable to the green area, which is land area accessed by men, and to the lighter orange, which is the joint access. And the other slide refers to the youth in particular and disparities by gender in access to labor market and literacy. You can just look at the right-hand side where you see the AU figures. You will see that the rate of participation of young women in the labor market is 44% against 52% for young men. And this means that across the AU, there is an 8% gap between young women and young men. And the same goes for unemployment, much more young women unemployed than young men. And also literacy, much more young women illiterate than young men. So we want to put really women, we need to put really women at the center of COVID-19 responses. And how to do that? The speakers before me have already referred to many of these points, but we really need to engage women at the forefront and their organization in the design and implementation of the responses and mitigation strategies. We want to establish preferential quota and targets for women participation and leadership in national, local committees, task forces, and raise the awareness of the institution, government institution, organization working on COVID response about the importance of gender equality and engaging women. We mentioned already the importance of gender sensitive social protection programs and measure financial services, support to women access to technology, but ensuring that we are serious about addressing the existing digital gender gap. And all in all, we know that piecemeal approaches are no longer an option. We need to promote really gender transformative approaches to change the discriminatory norms, transform gender relations once and for all, and to make sure that rural women's role is recognized, and they're recognized as equal actors of sustainable development. So this is just another way to summarize some of the key policy actions. And here I would want to emphasize the importance of designing and implementing gender sensitive, but gender also responsive policies and programs, including investment plans, national agriculture investment plans, access to resources, equal access to resources, measure to support rural women's economic empowerment, recognition of unpaid work, and promotion of women collective action and leadership. And this all needs to be supported by data, as the commissioner emphasized, sex and age disaggregated data, and analysis, gender analysis, which also takes into account the intersectionality of vulnerability and social exclusion. So not all women are the same. There are also issues related to income, literacy, age, disability, sexual orientation, and many other issues that we do need to take into account when we design our policies and programs. Finally, this is my last slide, a few reflections on the free trade agreement. I agree that this presents huge opportunities, but at the same time, huge risks, especially for very small and medium scale women and youth-led enterprises. So our aim is really to seize the opportunities while minimizing the risk. We need strategies to promote and protect these kind of small and very small and medium enterprises led by women and by young women and men, in order for them to be able to access local market and get preferential access to national and sub-regional markets and even export markets. And women in the agriculture sector, women entrepreneurs, they need to be supported with a whole range of services, ranging from finance, business, coaching and leadership, access to agriculture extension, and also access to norm standards and certification, because this will be key, for instance, to be able to access value chains and export markets, and marketing and business management services. At the same time, we want to promote local food systems, and these can be at different scales, from very local to national, linking consumers with producers and increasing also the awareness of the importance that smallholder farmers and especially women play in local food systems. And so to promote solidarity, really solidarity that goes from all the way from the farmer to those who are consuming the food. And it's really thanks to the resilience of our farmers that all in all, the food systems was able to withstand the challenges of a global COVID pandemic so far. And greening of the economies, without forgetting that here too, we need gender responsive policies and programs. There's evidence that documents that the green economy is especially masculine, and that we need to promote women's access to these opportunities, including young women who are maybe still studying and have the opportunity to also specialize in some of these new areas of expertise. And the final 2 points, I will never be tired of repeating this. We need to bring rural women at the tables where decisions are made. We cannot longer afford to make decisions on top of rural women. We need to hear their voices and we need to hear from them. And as the commissioner and other speakers before me have said, we can leverage on the existing policy commitments. Africa in this sense is great. There's high level commitments ranging from the Agenda 2063 to the Malabo Declaration. And we need to use this commitment in a strategic way to keep our governments accountable, and so that they can promote gender responsive policies, programs, and funding. All of this needs to come with preferential and earmarked funding. And this is why the importance of engendering the national agriculture investment plans. I attended last week the high-level meeting on the Africa Green Revolution. It was the Africa Green Revolution Forum. And everywhere the call was really clear, coming from heads of states, ministers of agriculture and environment. We cannot have a green revolution without our rural women and young women and men. So there's not going to be any green revolution if we don't include them at the center of our responses. I think this is it. And I want to just share with you that this is the cover of the publication of that summarizes the work that the commissioner was referring to. So it's a regional outlook that presents data from across the continent on the status of rural women in agriculture and food systems, and also sharing good practices from different countries in the region. So the publication will be officially launched at the FAO Conference of Ministers of Agriculture Regional Conference at the end of the month. So the link that you see is the link to the summary version, which is already available online. And I welcome you to go ahead and have a look because it has a lot of very interesting information and data. Thank you. Sorry for going overboard with time.
Thank you very much, Clara. I did not interrupt you because the last slide, not this one about a conference, but the last slide summarized everything that most people have been saying, and I would have had to do that, so you did that for me, so thank you very much. Now I would like to open this meeting for some questions. We already have some questions that have been sent ahead of time that maybe the panel can begin to address. I will be looking to see, and I think that Keith will help me. If there are any hands up, just let me know which hands are up so that I can call on them. But one of the questions is, how are we documenting the experience of extreme weather patterns, such as the floods that you're having in Sudan, Ethiopia, the locusts in Kenya? How are we documenting and assessing the huge impact of climate disasters on women and girls in the agriculture sector? What structural strategies have been adopted or need to be placed at national and regional levels towards sustainable recovery? Any one of the panel can answer these questions. I think the questions are on the chat. You can look at them. This is the first question that is on the chat. So please look at it and see if you would like to address it. So are you looking at your chat? Yeah. So it's a question of documentation again that the commissioner talked about. How are we documenting the impact of climate disasters on women and girls? And what structural strategies have been adopted or need to be placed at national and regional level towards sustainable recovery? Does any one of you have anything to say about that? Or any one of the participants? Sometimes people ask a question and they have the answers to it themselves. So if you have anything to say about this, please raise your hands. Keith, is there anyone raising their hand? Keith?
Hands raised.
There are no hands raised, huh?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So panelists, would you like to address this question?
Yeah, Thelma, if I can come in.
Yes.
I think it still goes back to some of the call to action we've been raising, because it's not enough to have national governments, continental governments say they are committed to developing agriculture. It's all rhetorics year in, year out. And we are saying that it's time to act instead of just talking. Because, for instance, I referred to the biannual review report. The second in the series. We know because they might not have the resources to gather all this information, but the other stakeholders, like the non-state actors, have access to some of this information. How do they now coordinate to generate and put all this data together so that we could have this information in one place? So the call is that government should work with other stakeholders to generate this information and then have them in one place so that that could help them design better strategies and more structured strategies to bring the solution. Because we can't keep talking, we can't keep making commitments without action. everybody is talking about how important agriculture is to mitigating the impact of COVID or any other kind of climatic or natural disaster impact on Africa and the continent. But what are we doing? The investment in agriculture is still very low. We don't even regard agriculture as very important in some of the budget allocations we have within the countries. So it's high time the government stand up to their responsibilities in ensuring that we have this information. The information is out there. The non-state actors are willing to gather as much as they can, but they have the role to bring them together so we have them in one place. Thank you.
So I think that's an important point for us to bring to the attention of the commissioner, because whenever she has a meeting of the ministers, they need to realize that a lot of the information that they require are in the hands of non-state actors. And so they need to reach out to non-state actors and try to coordinate with them to get the data and to come up with strategies for addressing the situation. I think that's a very important point. I'm sure the GMAC team is noting these points for us to bring to the attention of the commissioner. We had hoped that she would stay with us the whole time, but as you can see, work is, does anyone else have anything else to add to this, or shall we go to the next question?
I wanted to add a few points, Thelma, if you allow me.
You are allowed.
Thank you. So yes, I would like to just remind ourselves the importance of collecting data. So I refer, for instance, to the example of COVID. A lot of assessments were done after the initial outbreak of COVID to assess the impact on different areas or sectors of agriculture at different scales. But sometimes even these assessments tend to be gender blind. So even simple information that could be collected in a sex disaggregated manner either is not collected or sometimes is collected but not analyzed. So we need to keep reminding ourselves that if we don't have the evidence, it will be really difficult to convince our policymakers that they need to do something. So I think this is also the point that the commissioners was trying to make. And this is also this kind of baseline data is also important to inform not only in the immediate aftermath of a pandemic such as COVID, but also for the future. I remember that I was still in the Asia office when the big earthquake hit Nepal, and it was thanks to the effort that had been done before that the UN team, together with the government, was immediately able to assess how differentially how many women were impacted, what kind of measures should be put in place. It was thanks to the systematic collection of this data that they were able to pull out that data and use it to design better responses. So this is something that we all need to be contributing to. And as Constance said, it needs not to be only official government data. I mean, non-state actors, international organizations can complement from their perspectives and from their standpoint. And in FAO now there's a major effort to bring all the data sets together, even in a geospatial form, so that socioeconomic data can be layered over also geophysical data and have all the information on challenges of the agriculture sector at the natural resource level, but also at the people level. So who is doing what, where, what kind of activities they're doing. And of course, if we go the extra mile and make sure that this kind of information is also disaggregated by sex and complemented with qualitative information on gender, I think we will be in a much stronger position to design programs and strategies that are more effective. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Clara. Well, I'm sitting here listening to all of you and saying to myself, well, okay, to go beyond rhetoric and get on to action, is there something which the FAO offices in every country should be coordinating?
The FAO works in collaboration and in support with our government counterparts. There's an increasing call at not only at the FAO but at the UN level to be working more cross-sectorally and in partnership with each other. I think the Sustainable Development Agenda principle is that nobody can actually achieve all that working in silos and in isolation, that we will need to join forces, and this also goes for the private sector, who will be a major player in the trade agreement. So we need to bring all the like-minded stakeholders together and work together. It cannot be done by one organization, one NGO, one government in isolation. So we are really at the crossroad, I think. And as I said, business as usual is no longer an option.
Constance, it sounds to me like this is something that should be pushed by the national committee that we are planning. What do you call it? The national management, the country management committee that was proposed. Sounds to me like this is the kind of thing that country management committee could have as one of its big objectives. So
yeah, exactly.
Let's think about it, because we can rope in FAO, we can rope in UN Women, and all the non-state actors. Make sure the ministries, as the commissioner said, it's not just the Ministry of Agriculture, but it's the Ministry of Finance, etc. Bring all those people together, and let's see how we can work on the issue of data and the kind of structural changes that are required. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Keith, are there any hands up? Keith, how are you? Hello, Keith.
Any hands up? I think the panelists have done a great job.
Okay. So let me see. The second question is the Paris Agreement. Which one of you are really up on the Paris Agreement, panelists? Constance, are you up on the Paris Agreement? How do we see the role of African actors in advancing the implementation of the Paris Agreement? Maybe Clara also, Chengi, are you up on the Paris Agreement? Yes, Chengi, are you about to speak?
No, I'm not on the Paris Agreement. I didn't check on it in detail.
Okay, very good. Constance, what about you? Are you up on the Paris Agreement?
No idea.
Okay. No, Clara?
Maybe I'll just say a few words, and I think we have seen over the past few decades an increasing presence and call for gender equality and transformative approaches in climate change governance. I think that the Paris Agreement is also, and the governing bodies are also increasingly taking this this matter seriously. And this is thanks to the activism of women, civil society groups, feminist activists in climate justice, who have really promoting the gender transformative agenda at the center of climate action. Climate action, of course, has a two dimension. One is the mitigation of the impacts of climate change. The other one is adaptation. In both areas, I think there's still a lot of room for improvement. Although even major climate funds like the Global Environmental Facility or the Green Climate Fund, now they're increasingly, let's say, linking their funding to strict criteria for gender equality. And they're also monitoring the funding share that goes to gender equality and women's focused activities, meaning that the accountability is also increasing. As I said, I think there's a realization, at least at the political and the discourse level, that sustainability and tackling the challenge of climate change cannot be done without women. Not only because they're key actors in agriculture, and agriculture both as emitters of, is one of the key sectors that is implicated by climate change and has a role to play not only in mitigating and finding more sustainable ways to produce, but also in adapting and helping farmers to adapt to the changes that are brought about in the form of extreme weather events or unforeseen climate patterns. And we need to do that, again, getting women as part of the solution. Women and youth. Women, especially because they're key actors in agriculture, but also in the conservation of agrobiodiversity. We should not forget that women are often those who are custodians of very important knowledge and practices. And also youth, because the issue of climate change and sustainability cannot be addressed if not from a generational perspective. So thinking about what kind of planet we are preparing for our children. So we need to get them involved as part of the response. And there are a lot of opportunities. As I said, many of the opportunities, new opportunities, are likely to be taken up by men and boys. So we need to gear up our girls to be more involved, for instance, in science, to be more involved in the response to climate change, including from the agricultural sector. FAO is promoting a lot of training, promotion of climate responsive, climate smart agriculture with young farmers, women and men, and also gender transformative climate smart agriculture, meaning that there are practices that can be put in place that at the same time are able to, let's say, keep in mind the inequalities that exist, because as we were reminded, it doesn't mean that giving opportunities to women and men will ensure, that in itself will ensure that women will be able to avail of those opportunities. So we need extra efforts. And this is what in FAO we are trying to promote. So moving beyond gender sensitive and moving towards increasing gender responsive as the norm, but also gender transformative as the overall goal, where we get to see also these deep-rooted inequalities and gender relations transforms. And men and boys have to be also part of this transformation. Of course, we need to engage them and get them on board.
Okay, thank you so much, Clara. That was a lot. And what that all said to me is that there is just so much that we need to keep up with. We haven't kept up with the Paris Agreement, and I can see that there are many opportunities there, especially if the donors are making the gender responsiveness of state actors an imperative for receiving funds. We should be in there and seeing how we can take advantage of some of this. So that's a training opportunity again for those of us who are working on the issue of women and agriculture. So thank you very much for all of that information. Are there any hands up, Keith? No hands up? Then I will go to the third question. How should we structure the relationships within the agricultural value chain to build the resilience capacity of women and girls in the agricultural sector? How should we structure the relationship within the agricultural value chain? And this has to do also with markets and, you know, how are women prepared to participate in markets, technology, and all of that, you know. I don't know what thoughts you might have on this, Changi and Constance.
Okay, I'll go first. I think what is key in actually ensuring that our women have access to the international markets, as I said earlier on, in the context of trade. I mentioned that export markets have got rigorous, rather tough standards for agricultural produce. And the first port of call is actually to build capacity in our women, especially as regards the phytosanitary standards that are required by agricultural products. So we need to actually to ensure that our women are actually familiar, they are conversant with what's obtaining for the intended export market. And secondly, we need to actually have a paradigm shift, as it were. As I'm talking right now, most of our women are involved in cross-border trade, but with this ASFTA which is coming, which is actually hinged on an export strategy, it will be worthwhile for our women to be trained along those lines. And what I'm saying here is we need our women to structure themselves into associations so as to actually be in a position to approach maybe governments who should actually provide the training. And what we are notorious of as Africa is we've been exporting a lot of raw commodities into the global world. And what the AFTA is going to be doing is to actually encourage a value addition. What it means that if someone is producing, let's say for an example, we are producing ginger, there is actually a lot of scope around that product. Instead of you exporting ginger as it is, you can actually add value to it and sort of expand the chain locally. By expanding the chain, you are transforming that product into a spice, there are a lot of things that can come out of that ginger, as it were. So it's about maybe educating especially our women to actually value add, because they are more in the fields, to actually value add their agricultural products. And thirdly, the ASFTA favors goods which are wholly produced in Africa, meaning that because the wholly produced actually leans a lot in agricultural products because they are wholly produced. What it means, it becomes that area becomes a low-hanging fruit, as it were, for women's businesses to actually tap into the market right away, provided they have also mastered the controls, the standards that are required in the countries of exports. By that, I'm trying to say that when exporting maybe into Africa, into another African country, it is going to be relatively easy rather than venturing into an international market because of the aspect of wholly obtaining in an African state, meaning you don't have to go to what they call the rigorous processes of proving that your goods are actually of the African continent. The fact that it's grown in Africa is actually made in Africa without you even having to go to your revenue authorities to prove that these goods indeed come from Africa. So that area, the agricultural area becomes a low-hanging fruit for our women to actually have, where we have to see that capacity is actually built in terms of the mastering what is actually obtaining in the export markets, in terms of actually adding value, beneficiation, expanding the value chain of whatever product they are producing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chenye. And as you said, also is the issue of connecting the producers with those who are, it's making cooperatives, producers cooperatives, you know, and then people processing cooperatives, etc., and making sure they are linked up. Constance, do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, I just only wanted to add on that, I mean, the women farmers already are beginning to realize that the only possible way for them to get access to things that are rightfully due to them is to be coming together. And all over Africa, we know women farmers, whether they are at the production level or at the value adding level, are already coming up as cooperatives. But the problem we still have is that even when they come up as cooperatives and then get themselves in a position and then also interface with government and relevant authorities to say, we are available, we are willing to be trained, we are willing to have our capacities built, we still play that politics of feeling that, oh, they are rural women, they can only just produce, let's leave them at that level, and then we don't carry them along, then we only make sure we keep them at that poverty level. But if we consciously feel that women farmers need to be on the table at all times, we should open up opportunities for them to also play along the value chain. Who says the farmers that are producing in the farm cannot also add value or even market? They have all those groups within their cooperatives. But how do we ensure that when these issues come up, that they are taken into consideration? Talking about the AFCTA that is being discussed, who has taken time to break down some of these terminologies, some of these policies, guidelines, you know, to the farmers to be sure that they are able to have a level playing field, you know, to participate in this whole process. So we need to, it still boils down to government making sure that there's an enabling environment, because you find out in some cases, international or foreign farmers come into the country, the government will provide land free of charge, they'll provide all the necessary infrastructure that normal farmers don't have. And then you expect them to play on the same level playing ground. It's not gonna work. So the idea is that if we are really, really serious about creating, you know, equal opportunity, we should start from home. We should make sure that these women are taken on board, that their issues are properly, taken on board, and then they're exposed to the same level playing ground. You talk about producing things wholly. Okay, let's take the ginger you're talking about for an example. They produce gingers in the far farms, but the road to take them out is not there. They don't have storage facilities. You don't have small cottage industries where they can even add value. They only after to say, let me sell off what I can and feed my children. What have government done to make sure that these things are available? So you find out that they only produce, other people come in and buy from them and then add value and make all the home money. But unless there is that conscious effort to make sure that they are fully included and they are participating, we won't get there. 10 years to come, we will still be saying the same things. So it's high time we change the way we are doing things. From the design stage to the implementation stage, the women farmers' issues and voices should be put at the forefront. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Where's my cursor? Yeah. Thank you so much, Constance. I'm looking at the time now. It's already well, East African time is 3:41, which means
can I say something shortly?
Yes.
Or briefly, I think Constance has got a very valid point. I think what is very important, it will be actually have shot women in the foot if I don't share this with you. What he is actually obtaining is that our women lack information. There is not sufficient trade information for them to know. Even as we speak now, the ACFTA has actually put in policies that should be cascaded at national level. And that information, you find that it is going to be difficult for it to actually reach the common woman. And as I'm speaking right now, most women are not even aware of this ACFTA that is on board. And secondly, when you speak about the value chain of actually from the farms right up to the market, there are a lot of gaps. I totally agree. But what again, it boils down to lack of information. As you be maybe happy to be aware that there is the trade facilitation agreement, which goes hand in hand with the ACFTA. This agreement has actually found out that women are not represented in the logistics sector. What is happening in those sectors, your cold chains and everything which we are talking about, is they actually have been availed to have our women trained in those sectors, because you find that the logistics sector is masculinely dominated. It's actually it remains a male-dominated field. We don't have our women in our ports of entry, in our borders as facilitators in the logistics industry, as customs brokers. The women are completely absent. So there is now an affirmative that we need also to train our women to be part of the logistics chain, so that in the end, that information is also going to transform and as cascade to the lowest, to the women who are in the other sectors, maybe the agricultural sector or the manufacturing sector. They need to know that information. So information is actually, the lack of it has actually been a pediment. And we also want to make our women aware that when this after ACFTA is rolling out, the research says that most of these agreements, women and MSMEs, they don't benefit from these agreements. That's the truth about what is actually being found out by research. And what should happen is also goes back to the information that we need people to know. We need to sing about these things at each and every platform, so that once it is domesticated at national level, the people are able to hold accountable their governments that there is this what is happening. Because when there's no information, they cannot even know when to actually hold accountable the stakeholders that are responsible. And the other thing, like what has happened in the also research, and even in my country it has happened, when agriculture is actually automated, if there is mechanization, you find that the women disappear along the chain and the men take over. Once there is automation and there's mechanization, our women are left behind. So now the problem now is actually for us to actually go to our policymakers, to go to the government, the government is always there to enable, but I find that the enablement would have been done, but it goes halfway because the other part is not even aware. So we are saying our women in agriculture, they must not take up, especially in commercial farms, they must not also take up those roles where there is legal scope for growth in that sector. So we need to actually educate them that doing a repetitive task in any venture is not enhancing, it doesn't add value. So it starts with us educating them, highlighting the discrepancies on some things which are seemingly good, but at the end of the day, the woman is shortchanged. And also now, as we are beginning to as the whole world is actually looking inwards, and materialism is actually going down, we are now looking at ourselves as providers. And what we are saying is that the woman has always been ahead in the game of agriculture, but somehow there's no statistics to capture her sweat. The GDP doesn't capture her sweat. So it's now for us now to insist on the policymakers to have a deliberate aim of ensuring that the activities, be it informal or formal, they are actually captured, so that in the end, our policymakers are informed. Thank you. That's my addition.
Thank you very much. We share your passion about this. And I think, Clara, this next meeting you're going to have of the ministers of agriculture. I know when FAO has a meeting, is at a global level. But if you're ever going to call the ministers of agriculture for Africa together, please give us a space there, because we need to discuss these things. And please tell your director for Africa, the Ethiopian guy, I can't remember his name now, that we really need to discuss these issues with the ministers. Taking it country by country is very slow. They really need to come up with a concerted program for how to go forward with promoting women in agriculture, using the specific issues that we've brought up. I think we've been very specific today. And I'm just about to close this meeting now, Wudasi. And
can I just clarify one thing about the conference?
Yes.
Okay, the regional conference is part of the governing bodies of FAO. So in normal times, it's usually only for government representatives. Not even we are allowed to participate. In COVID times, because all these conferences have moved online, there's been space for others to join. I don't know if this will be the case for the regional conference for Africa. But for instance, the global FAO conference went online live and anyone could participate. So at least there's maybe an opportunity for people to listen to what the ministers of agriculture, government representatives say. Also, there's a parallel process that ensure that civil society, farmers organizations are represented. So there's always a CSO forum that is organized back to back to the regional conference. And this would be also the space where women's groups, farmers groups can voice their needs, their stance, and ensure that these voices and these issues are brought to the attention of the conference. This year, because of the COVID disruptions, the CSO conference was held in March, while the conference is still to be organized in October. But this is just to let you know that there are also formal channels through which civil society can participate and engage in the formal processes of FAO membership, and namely the governments.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, we know how these conferences work, and we've been to them before, but I think that we have to try to find another way to get around this. These are some of the things that need to change, the structure of these conferences. In the women's peace movement, we've had to change the structure of the way peace agreements are made. And so the structure of these conferences, because women don't have a voice in these places, there are very few ministers of agriculture we have who are women. I remember in the AU, we had only one woman. The AU is a male club. And we had only one woman, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, and we had to put all of our issues to her so she could try to transmit them. But I just must say, in deference to her colleagues, we had very good cooperation from certain heads of states, like the president of Rwanda, Senegal, Nigeria, South Africa, and those were very helpful to us in pushing some of the policy agreements that we managed to get. So we have to think very strategically and see what we can do to push some of these issues to our ministers of agriculture. But we will do it because we are the regional women and we should be able to handle our regional governments. So we will try to do the best we can. Yeah. Okay. Thank you all very much. Wudasi, where are you? May we bring this to a close now?
Yes, we can bring the meeting to a closing now. We have no further questions from our participants.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I really need to, first of all, thank the GMAC Secretariat for organizing this meeting and for choosing the panelists that they chose, because we had panelists who could provide us with very, very rich insight into the topic that we are discussing. And thank you for struggling to get the commissioner, despite her very busy schedule, to come and share with us what she's doing, her program of action, and her recommendations to us for how to move forward. We've highlighted quite a few things today, and I don't want to take too much time to go over all of them because I've gone over some of them as we went on. But you could see that the issue of data, the issue of connecting what information is in civil society to what government is doing. You can see the issue of social protection, but not just social protection, but also protection of the businesses, the small businesses that that women have. The need for supporting domestic markets, and just trying to make sure that we're not just working with the ministries of agriculture, but that we have an integrated, intersectorial approach to the work we are doing. So thank you again. I hope that the slides from Clara will be distributed to the members, because I saw a request for them, and that you will make efforts to get the conclusions of the ministerial meeting to distribute to members as well. Have I left out anyone else to thank, Wudasi?
No.
Okay, okay, Wudasi, we thank you also for being with us.
Thank you so much. Okay, thank you so much to all our panelists and our moderator for this thought-provoking engagement and the deeper discussion and the clear asks that we need to ask from our commissioner. We will share the report with you, but also definitely share the report with our commissioner for their consideration in their next ministerial meetings. So thank you so much, and thank you all our participants. With this, we close our discussion for today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes.